point of living. Like, life is meant to be shared. Experiences are meant to be happening with other people. And I understand how when you don't have a lot of people in your life and you have no one to connect with or share how you feel, it becomes really bleak and you're like, what's the point? Welcome back to another episode of Cats, Chats, and Coffee. This is Alex, and I am here with Liv, as always, on a nice, beautiful, rainy day. We have a little bit of a long one for you guys today, so make sure you get comfortable or get your cup of coffee or whatever. Yep. If you're going for a walk or going for a drive, turn us up and get ready for a good one. We are super happy about this one. It's going to be a little bit of a positive one, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a lighter. We've had a couple episodes where we're doing some deeper open chats just off the heart. This one's a little bit of a lighter topic.
But before we get into that, let's get into the first segment here, which is what's in our cup. This is funny because we were always going on about the local, supporting the small business, the coffee shops that are located around the HRM and beyond. And this morning, because it was a really early one for us, we just ran over to Starbucks. We thought this would probably be like way longer down the road as far as featuring Starbucks.
I mean, we're episode 9, so I think we did pretty good. We've gone to a lot of cafes and coffee shops, but today was like the good old pre-order and pickup.
Yeah, and there's only really one Starbucks around here, so we went to that one, and my go-to order, I'll just say what my go-to order is, and I've posted this on my Instagram probably like 3 times already because I was like convinced it's the best thing in the world, and no one's going to be surprised at all when they hear what my order is, but it's a chai tea latte hot, made with oat milk, with 1 shot of blonde espresso and 2 pumps brown sugar syrup. So
would you call it a dirty chai latte?
So it's a dirty chai latte.
Yeah.
And the 2 pumps brown sugar syrup, for most people, you're gonna hate this because
it was. So she made me try it.
Yeah.
And this is like just a little insight into the comparison between me and Alex. It was sweet as hell.
Definitely sweet.
Like, could have probably done 1 pump.
Yeah,
for me.
probably 1 pump actually would still be good. I saw it, I don't know where I saw this recipe. It must have been on TikTok or somewhere on Instagram. And I was told in this post that I read that it tastes like a snickerdoodle cookie.
Right.
And so I went and tried it, and kind of the rest is history. So if you guys want to try it, you should go do it. It's medium chai tea latte made with oat milk, 2 pumps brown sugar syrup, and 1 shot of blonde espresso. What about you?
Different for sure. I kind of get like a generic, I feel like. So this morning I got a grande vanilla sweet cream cold brew with a blonde espresso shot. So usually we just did like the order on the app and then pick it up. If I was like actually chatting with the barista or whatever, I would also get a half pump of white mocha because it's just like evens out the espresso and the sweetness like perfectly. But yeah, I just got it without that this morning with the extra blonde espresso, and it's like the perfect pick-me-up in the morning, I feel like. Because, we're doing a morning session, so we needed like...
We're a little tired today.
A little tired, yeah.
But the funny thing is we had just posted this or that, so if you guys want to check out our Instagram at Cats, Chats, and Coffee, you can go see the post. Was that a story or a post on our...
It was a post on the feed, but yeah, we made a poll just kind of... But you can also go comment on and just let us know if you prefer the hot coffee or the iced coffee, because I think it's been pretty clear with all of our What's in Our Cup features that Alex is obviously the hot coffee girly, and I am an iced coffee girly.
Yeah. But I do genuinely love iced coffee as well, and I can tell you for sure as we get into the warmer seasons here in the summertime, I will be going toward more of the iced coffee.
Yeah.
My Tim Hortons order, 9 times out of 10 is an iced drink. So
there you go. Funny story, I was actually coming up the elevator holding both of our coffees this morning, so I had the hot in one hand and the cold in the other, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, can't wait to drink my iced coffee. And then I just like had this moment where I was like, wow, this hot coffee feels really nice and cozy in my hand. And then I was like, it's a gloomy, rainy day.
I
Like,
know.
I could have used a hot coffee this morning, not an iced. And then the first sip I had of my iced coffee, I was like, yes, this is...
Honestly, it is. It
feels
kind
good.
of is a cozy, like, warm hug. Maybe if you're depressed like me, you need the hug coffee. Just kidding, guys. But honestly, the reason really that I don't go for the ice is because I drink it 2 times faster because it's easier to drink. It's more like drinking water, right?
Yeah.
Versus a hotter coffee, you kind of have to let it
sit a little bit longer.
Yeah, take sips of it and stuff like that. That's true. But
I do tend to get through my drinks a little bit quicker. But
anyway, let's move on. So you guys can hit up Starbucks, try our drink orders, let us know what you think, and if you guys have a drink order from Starbucks that is your go-to, tell Liv and I, and we will go try it. Like,
give me a nice iced coffee, something different,
give her
but
something
not too
hot.
sweet. No, don't do it.
But yeah, no, DM us and give us your orders, and we'll go try them out. Like, we'd love to do that and feature what your guys' orders are, and taste test them live and rate them and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so, it'd be fun.
So let's get into today's episode. So today's episode is actually called The Benefits of Friendship, Nurturing Connections for Better Health. And we are going to discuss why friendships are super relevant and important in our lives, and why they should be important in your lives, and how our friendship has been cultivated over the last, I don't know, almost year now. It's going to be a year coming up in actually in a couple weeks. So we definitely want to chat around that. We've broken the episode down into a few different segments, which we'll introduce as we go through. So yeah, sit back and
hang out with us.
Yeah, the first question here that I'll just pose to Liv, and we can kind of get into it, is why are friendships so important for our well-being?
I think that's a great question, and really just a great way to dive into the topic. So to answer that, I mean, we kind of know, like, humanity as a whole has come from, like, we used to all be interconnected, right? People used to be a lot tighter knit. So I feel like we're meant to have connections. We're meant to be, connecting with people, and whether that's building families, friendships, anything like that. Like, it's something that we need. It's
human nature.
It gives you a different perspective. It opens you up to, like, potentially new hobbies, interests. It gives you support. Maybe I don't know, I'm just thinking back in, like, the olden days, like, they used to get together and cook their meals together, or do all the cleaning together, or even nowadays, like,
raising their children together.
Yeah, like, if you live with a partner, or, like, your family or whatever, is like, you split up the chores. Like, it's basically just, like, for it to help your well-being. It's all around support. It's support when you don't need it, when you do need it. It's connection and that, like, love that you can't necessarily give yourself, that affection that you can't necessarily give yourself. Like, so a little bit more outside yourself.
Yeah, friendship has been shown over the years, so many different studies, that connecting with like-minded people that make you feel seen, people that you can be vulnerable with, is extremely beneficial, not only to our mental health, but our physical health.
Yep.
It increases our happiness, reduces our stress, like I just mentioned, improves our physical health in a lot of ways. And Liv was kind of alluding to the fact, back in the day, we stemmed from small societies. We are a hunter-gatherer type of place. That's Homo sapiens came from that.
Yeah.
If you look in the animal kingdom, mammals that are closest to us, the chimpanzees, monkeys, like so many other animals are living in communities,
reliant on each other for survival
and supporting each other.
Yeah.
And I think the reason Liv and I had talked about this recently and wanted to talk about this with you guys is part of the post-pandemic, or during the pandemic experience, we as a society and as a culture and as an economy all became really isolated. And for the first time in our lifetime, we really experienced what, like, true loneliness, languishing, lack of connection is. And I think, Liv, in the last episode, you had mentioned a lot about social media playing a massive part in how we feel. Social media is definitely a culprit of the dying, or the hurting that social connection that we have in person because everyone's just online all the time, whether you're gaming or on social media or even working from home now. We're losing that connection for sure.
No, totally. And if you think about it, like humanity as a whole, like we stem from animals. Like we still have those in our biology. Like the same thing, the hunter, the gatherer, like having a connection with other like-minded humans, like that will always be in our genetic build. Like it's just a matter of fact. But I think, like Alex said, looking at how we get that sense of connection nowadays and what that looks like for us, like it's through social media, it's through technology, it's like, I don't know, even like working with your coworkers is over a Zoom meeting now. Sorry. So it's a very different world that we live in now compared to what we used to live in. And it's just kind of funny to think about because those needs are still there. They're just not being met in the same way. It's probably creating it even harder.
Honestly, I think everyone listening is probably could like think back right now to a time when in the most recent past, in their most recent history, where they felt lonely, even surrounded by a ton of people. Like you could be a mom and you're a stay-at-home mom and you have a newborn baby or you have a toddler and you're home all day. And yes, you could be technically with another human being, but you don't feel that
still feel
same
alone.
because it's not the same as having like close friendships. Or you could be with a partner and your partner could come home from work and you're just quietly sitting across from them eating supper and like not even connecting.
I almost find that to be like, for me personally, and I think a lot of people will agree, that's almost worse in a sense, like to not be alone in a room with like other people, but to feel like you are, like, and I definitely think that that stems from the connections that we've built through like social media or just technology in general. Like we don't necessarily know how to fully connect with someone when we are in a room with them. Like when you're walking down the street, like just look around, put your phone in your pocket and just look around for once and you will see that like 95% of the population is glued to their phone. Like there's no way to, like, even smiling at strangers on like the street nowadays, like I tried to make a personal effort to do that and I noticed probably like 1 in 5 people who pass me, I actually get an opportunity to do that because the other 4 people had their head down or they're on the phone
Distracted.
or texting or whatever it is.
I love that point you just made. I think we're losing the social skills and we're losing the empathy and we're losing a lot of that physical touch that we need.
Yeah, the generic stuff that was there, like,
stuff that you learn as a child with your friends growing up. And I was just talking about this with my mom yesterday, actually. Like, I don't remember the last time I had butterflies to go, and this is nothing against all my lovely, beautiful friends I have now, but like the same feeling you'd get when you were like pulling up to a birthday party or you were going for a sleepover or you were having, pizza night with your neighbors, whatever that looked like.
It's like overwhelmed with excitement.
Yeah, even playing basketball on my teams when I was younger, that like feeling I had that I was like higher than life, so excited to connect with my team, my classmates, my friends, whatever, my family, my cousins that I don't see anymore. Like we all grow up and we start to isolate ourselves, and back in the day,
you have social anxiety or you overthink like actually going to a friend's birthday party or oh, there's going to be a group of people that I'm not friends with, I'm not going kind of thing. Or
well, when was the last time like you saw street parties happening? Like that used to be such a, like, it's like similar to how we thought quicksand was going to be such a big issue in our lives when we grew up, like, but it doesn't actually exist. It's like I remember how I used to think, oh, when I have my own house, like I'm going to have street parties and fireworks and it's going to have this...
I'm going to be friends with all my neighbors. Meanwhile, you're like putting up a fence.
You're like, don't
taller than the trees to like... That's literally the perfect example of kind of like where society is at nowadays. Like, and it's
how can I avoid this person versus how can I like bring over a casserole and be like, hey, I'm so and so.
Oh, that sent chills through my body because like literally, like if I were to get a house and like to be in a neighborhood, like I would probably be too anxious to go and introduce myself to my neighbors, and especially like I think being like the new person in a neighborhood, like you would probably want the neighbors to come to you and welcome you into, and kind of get like an eye for like what your community is like. But that's just not always the case anymore because a lot of neighbors don't, interact with the other people that live around them and stuff. And
totally.
I think it's easier to look at people nowadays as like humans just in general as like a nuisance and everyone's selfishly like caught up in their own head or their own world, that they're not seeing everyone else around them is the exact same as them, is going through the same thing, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to read a statistic here that we pulled up, and then we can get into some things that we were learning about the benefits of friendship and how that actually helps our lives. So, according to research from the Mayo Clinic, having strong friendships can help reduce the risk of depression, high blood pressure, and obesity.
Which are some of like your biggest health issues.
And some of the health issues we are seeing, or we're being told we are seeing, amongst clinicians after pandemic and after
skyrocketing.
Yeah, it's these things. So I actually told Liv about a term that I had heard on another podcast called OSOs. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I don't even remember what that stands for. What's the first O?
Oh, it's other significant others.
Okay, yeah. So like your significant other, like soulmate type thing.
Other than your romantic relationship.
Yeah, so it's literally like not your partner, it's the other, like someone, like your closest friend kind of thing, I guess, who you would like consider that. No, I think she brought that up to me and we kind of chatted a little bit about it, which is how we kind of were like, this is a great topic and information we want to share here. But yeah, as like both of us are single right now, neither of us have a significant other, so having a OSO or an other significant other, a really close friend in our life, is extremely important, probably even more important that we realize right now, just because like everyone needs someone that's closest to them, and maybe that's a family member for some people if you don't have a partner, but the reality is for a lot of like, humans are meant to be companions, like we're meant to have a companion long-term kind of thing. So for a lot of people that looks like a partner. For us right now it's just some close friends, which I don't say just in like a negative way by all means, but yeah, it's having someone close to you that you can share all of those like really deep things with. It's kind of just having a deeper connection with like this person rather than like maybe your whole friend group or maybe like your family. There might be things that you can't talk about with everyone. Like you have that one person that you share all of like the nitty gritty like personal details with, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think to add to that point, having OSOs in your life gives your main partner, so say your romantic partner, a break from always being the one that gets the dumping or the venting. And it doesn't have to be a negative
like
thing.
If you do have a partner in the sense, like it's good to have an alternative as well.
Yeah, have somebody else you go to.
You still need friends.
Yeah, and I think a big thing about finding OSOs is that in order to have an other significant other, you have to like make the vow that you're willing to be vulnerable with them. And when you're vulnerable with people, people feel like they can connect with you more. And when you feel connected with somebody, you feel more seen. And then it just adds better, you get that serotonin, you get that dopamine, you get all those chemical responses you would from eating, for me, like eating a sweet, or maybe for Liv, it's going for a walk, or things that you get from the external world. You can find that from a deep, close connection with a friendship.
Not coming from just like a personal creation kind of thing.
Yeah. So think about your guys' OSOs. Who's somebody in your life who
and you can have multiple as well.
Absolutely.
Like I was referring to it as if it just needs to be like one close best friend, which is obviously not true. Like you could have a handful of people, and I think another great thing is having multiple different people to talk about different things, and have like you might have similar interests with some friends and then different interests with others. So
yeah, and they say there is a study that says that if you, I think it's 7 years, if you can get past a friendship of 7 years, then that friend's more likely to be a lifetime friend. You guys hear me say all the time, and I repeat this all the time, people come into your life for a reason, season, or lesson. The thing that I had mentioned once before was reason, season, lesson, or a lifetime. And if you can find OSOs in your life that can be lifetime long friends, I know people who haven't met their best friends until they were in their 40s. Now they're in their 60s, and they're like, I don't know, there should be a sitcom. It's like Grace and Frankie or the Golden Girls, like the older women who have these close relationships, and they might be divorced or they might be whatever in their pickleball group.
Go through life experiences together.
Then they experience exactly, and it's
and grow
so
together.
Awesome to see that, you know, you have different phases of your life where you have different OSOs, but having at least one, like Liv mentioned, if you're lucky enough to have multiple,
Yeah.
definitely cherish and hold on to that and value those. Check in on those friends, you
Yeah.
know?
No, yeah, for sure. Put just like a little bit more effort into it. Absolutely. Yeah, I think like another really good thing to add, kind of touching on like our notion that we mentioned at the start about how like humanity used to be a lot different back in the days. Like, just for example, nowadays, like we have compounds, retirement homes, group homes, like the Ronald McDonald House, for example. Like, we wouldn't have those options if that wasn't something that we needed collectively. Like,
Yeah.
even you think like elderly homes, like when you're no longer able to take care of yourself, you get put in a home with a bunch of other, and I know that that's obviously, it makes
Different
sense. Well,
circumstances.
yeah, like it
Yeah.
makes sense to have people in that realm who know how to take care of like the disabilities or the elderly in that sense, but also it's like the last years of your life, like why not have another opportunity to build a stronger
Community,
community. Yeah, and to
exactly.
kind of like, I know this sounds morbid, but like to go out on that positive note of, I had some friends. I made like a nice relationship or a group of relationships to kind of like end my life on.
Absolutely. Yeah, some of the loneliest people
There you
are the
go.
elderly.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of old folks' homes that there are women or men sitting in their wheelchairs or their chairs, like staring at the window because they don't have their family member visiting them.
Yeah.
So having like a retirement home or a group community or a compound where they're like doing shuffleboard or there's bingo night or there's
Yeah.
group cooking lessons, dance and salsa, and like,
It's all to try and be inclusive and to give them that like literal human connection that they're
well,
lacking.
exactly. What's the
Yeah.
point of living? Like, life is meant to be shared,
Yeah.
experiences are meant to be happening with other people. And I understand how when you don't have a lot of people in your life and you have no one to connect with or share how you feel, it becomes really bleak. And you're like, what's the point of all of this if I
It
don't?
literally changes your view on a lot of like different things, like outlook on life in a lot of different areas. Another thing I want to add to like just like the elderly in the home kind of thing is that is the perfect representation of if you did kind of put in your effort to create friendships and to have your OSOs and stuff like that, and you're not just relying on like your blood family while growing up, then when you are an elderly who is in a home, you're not solely reliant on your kids or your grandkids to take care of you. Now you have friendships still at this age because you nourished them and you like cultivated them and actually carried them over to this age, and now you maybe you have a couple of your friends in the group home with you. Or I know obviously it gets a little different when you get up to that age because people start to pass away and like you lose people at different ages, but yeah, I think that that's like the perfect example. If you don't want to like die alone or die lonely, like
Yeah.
nourish your friendships now, develop your relationships now, because the ones that you're making now are the ones that are gonna, they don't necessarily stick with you forever, but it'll carry through.
And that shows up in any age, any year. Like you mentioned, the Ronald McDonald House, which is a perfect example. So, if, for anyone who doesn't know, the Ronald McDonald Houses are for sick children and their families, and they live together when they have like kids with cancer and
Struggling with like
yeah.
similarities.
So
Yeah.
for all the logistic reasons, obviously, like they pay for meals and housing, and like it's quick, usually closer to the hospitals, and transportation and stuff is like supported there. But mostly it's because like when children who are sick are together with other kids, like it is literally shown to have an impact on their physical and mental health. And
God,
when
yeah.
you're happy and healthier, you can beat those sicknesses a lot easier.
Yeah.
And it is so important to remember that it, in every facet of life, having a connection is important for us.
Oh God, yeah, for sure. So yeah, one more stat that we're gonna throw on here. A study by the University of British Columbia found that people who have close friendships have a lower risk of mortality than those who do not. So the study surveyed 1,500 adults in Canada and found that people with a larger social support network had a 60% chance, like lower chance of risk of dying over the next 10 years. So that
Yeah.
just touches on exactly what we said. Like, yeah, like sick children or even just anyone going through health issues, like you have a better chance of fighting these health issues when you feel better.
Have
It's
people
just
rallying against
realistically,
you too.
yeah. And
Yeah.
even like elderly, like your lifespan probably goes a little bit longer if you have, well, it does. We're literally telling you the stats right now.
It
But
does.
yeah, this is the perfect example. But yeah, so we're going to kind of dive into a little bit further into like how you can nurture and maintain these friendships. So Alex, I'm going to ask you a question
Sure,
now.
yeah, ask away.
What are some ways that we can actively work to nurture and maintain our friendships?
Yeah, so I think that this question is like kind of a heavy one in a sense that
There's a lot to it.
I think about how nurturing and maintaining relationships has changed for me over the last years. I mean, I was young when I moved away. I kind of had a separate life
Yeah.
out on the other side of the country and had different relationships and stuff. And I look back and I kind of think I didn't do the best job at staying connected with the people back home. I was so distracted with my new career, with having a new relationship, with other things that were happening, that I probably could have done a better job at staying connected. And the only way of doing that would have been, through texting, social media, phone calls, FaceTiming. But what I did make sure I did was every time I came home, whether it was
Touch
for,
base with people.
yeah, I would go for dinner with my friends
Yeah.
or I'd see them and make an effort to actually see them. And I think that it's really important to actively show up in your relationships. I know that everybody make that joke. It's like, oh, I have that one friend we cannot speak for 6 months, and then I randomly bump into her or have a coffee, and it's
Everything's
like
normal. Yeah.
we just talked yesterday.
Yeah.
And as you get older, like that joke becomes a little less relevant because now you're like scheduling time to see people or you're like, we should go for coffee. And then that never happens.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, the people that I do have in my life, I want to check in on them. I want to even message them being like, just thinking about you. I think that whole thing I mentioned about scheduling time to see them, like it sucks that you have to schedule time, but the reality of the situation is
if
people
it's
are busy.
What's gonna work, it's kind of what you have
So
to do.
actually, like what my friend and I have done a couple of times in the last few months is like schedule, and my sister actually does this with her friends, and I got this from her, was pre-booking like a month or two in advance a night out, so making reservations for dinner.
Right. So
And
it's far enough in advance that you can like book it in your schedule, you can work everything around it, but it's also like, oh, the days are going by and then all of a sudden it creeps up and you're like, hey girl,
but you're committed.
We got our date this
Yeah.
week or next week or something.
Yeah. If you guys listen to our episode of Love and Relationships, Ticks, Tricks, and Icks, we mentioned that about guys, like when you want to go on a date with us, like actually plan the date. What day of the week? What time? Where are we going to go? Like that's the same with my
That's like adult
girlfriends and guy
relationships
friends.
just in general
Yeah,
now. Yeah.
just take the initiative, make the effort, and it's really at the end of the day it comes down to effort and choice. I know we're all busy. I know some of us are married, some of us have kids, some of us are running businesses, some of us are XYZ.
But you know what? We're also checking our phones. We're also updating our Instagram stories. We're also tweeting on Twitter or scrolling TikTok for 15,
Or watching
5 hours a
Netflix.
day or whatever
Yeah.
that is. So you have 2 minutes a day to either send a text message to a friend, to give them a call, or to do exactly
Support them
like
in other ways.
Yeah, or literally like you said, like just be like, hey, this date down the road, I know you have nothing planned for it yet, but we're gonna go on a road trip or we're gonna drive to the beach or something. Like pre-plan that. Like that's literally what you need to do, otherwise it's not gonna
really
happen.
it comes down to including regular communication like we just spoke about. Showing appreciation for when that happens. Like when we first launched the podcast, I had a friend that I haven't seen in years show up with a bouquet of flowers, and we only talked for like 3 minutes, and she was heading to work or the gym or something, and I felt so great. I posted it on my Instagram. Like I was so grateful for that little moment. And I mean,
small gesture.
It was like going and doing it is a big deal, but in the grand scheme of things, that small gesture like meant the world to me. And it was like all it took was once, and again, I'm not saying everybody has to show up with flowers, but checking in, like Liv
But
said,
for,
is...
like, example, in that situation where it's a friend that, like, you don't keep up with weekly or you don't see weekly or something, like, yeah, when you go as far as to start something as a podcast, she is now, I'm assuming the friend was a she.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so, like, she knows, like,
Yeah.
this is kind of a big deal for you, and even though we might not keep up week to week or whatever, like, I'm still gonna support you, we're still friends, I'm so proud of you, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. And
Goes a
just
long way.
I can't say this enough. If somebody says we should go for a coffee or we should have a glass of wine, or you make plan and then you cancel, because this has happened to me where I've made plans with people, I've been so excited, they've canceled for whatever reason, and that's fine, but they don't reschedule. It's like, okay, well, do you really care to know what's going on in my life? Should we maintain that friendship or not, or is it just more of an acquaintance? And that's fine too.
I think that's a good point that I'm quickly gonna, like, add to here is adult relationships is, like, I'm not saying they have to be 50-50, but at this point, like, you want someone who's going to be putting in effort for you. We know that, like, okay, this is what my work schedule looks like every week. I have all of these extra tasks that I have to deal with. Like, our schedules are not, do you know what I mean? Like, we are busy people, and if you're putting in the energy or you're taking the time out of your weeks to go on a coffee date with a friend, but you don't feel like that energy is being reciprocated, or maybe every time that you go to make plans with this friend, like, they're rescheduling, they're showing up late, or they just seem uninterested, or like, you can just tell whenever you're with them that it's not an equal friendship. I feel like that's, like, a really prominent thing. And that's kind of like when they say, like, I heard this a lot from my mom growing up, like, oh, you'll grow through your friends, or you'll grow out of that friendship, or, and eventually it gets to a point where you're like, okay, like, that friend lives this way, I live this way, we are no longer kind of on the same page.
Yeah, you kind of have to, like, almost, like, metaphorically put people in boxes, like, this is my lifetime friend, this is my ride or die, these are my acquaintances, these are my work friends, these are my family friends, like my boyfriend's sister, like, things like that, like, and realizing that at the end of the day, it's usually not about you.
Oh, never.
It's usually people
we all got our own worlds.
So caught up in their own life, so busy.
But it's important to know what to expect from each friendship or friend group, really.
Exactly. And, I mean, making friends, like you just said, as we've gotten older, your mom said we grow through friends. Like, it is harder to make genuine, loving, beautiful relationships as you get older.
It is.
It's not like when you're a kid, you're like, can I borrow your crayon?
Want to be
I
friends?
Like your ponytail. Let's have a sleepover. It's like, it's awkward. Like, I started yoga and did yoga for 2 years trying to, like, be friends with the yoga girls. And I was like, oh my God, this is so weird.
It's hard to introduce yourself and start a conversation. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a good point. It definitely gets so much harder, like, the older that you get. But also, I just want to throw this out there as well, is, like, being a female, like, it hasn't necessarily been easy, like, keeping friendships over the years, finding friend groups that are, like, loving and accepting, and, like, I don't know, I'm not trying to give, like, women in general a bad rep, because I don't think that it's the same thing as, like, when we talk about men. We're not talking about all men, we're not talking about all women in this situation, but we all know that there is a huge, I guess it's a stereotype, I would say, where women can be competitive, catty, potentially, gossip, dramatic even. And again, I'm not referring to all women. I've had tons of female friendships that have had, like, really none of this, but it's been, like, a prominent thing for me, and, like, even quite a lot of my other friends that I've, like, grown up with, where I think everyone probably has a situation where you're in a friend group where you're just like, this is not my kind of person, or this is...
It is definitely harder. I think we hear a lot, guys, like, sometimes girls are like, oh, I get along better with guys than I get along with girls. Or you see a girl who has a lot of guy friends and is, like, one of the boys versus, having those close female friendships. It is a little bit more difficult because women are more emotional on average, or maybe not more emotional, but more willing to be externally emotional. Versus, like, men just either don't have those feelings or hide them really well, or just don't have the same concerns. Like, we have a lot different things on our plate sometimes, and we're going to be worried about different things, and they might show up in different ways, like being a mother, being a female business
physical
owner,
body,
you know, going to the gym, things like that. The way we look is a huge thing that it's pretty different in society for men and women. That's just a fact.
Absolutely.
But it is. It's been hard sometimes to maintain those relationships as a female, or or have other people judge you or be jealous of you or feel a certain way about you that maybe they're not even correct about, or they're making an assumption. And instead of taking the time to like work through that or work through those feelings, they ghost you, or they gossip about you,
gossip behind your back,
or they cause
or you're with them and you're like, why are you treating me like this? Why do you make me feel like I'm irrelevant, or I'm not even here, or
taking responsibility?
Yeah.
And I think that's why you'll see a lot of women, as they've gotten older, it's like, I have 2 or 3 best friends, really good friends, and then 1,500 acquaintances, versus when you're younger, I look back at my
so many friend groups.
I had like 1,500
friends for this sport, friends for school,
and,
friends for that.
0 acquaintances. So it really what am I trying to say? Dynamic, thank
literally
you. Changes completely, and then having to get used to that new reality when you're dealing with other insecurities, or your ego is hurt, or whatever that looks like, can be very challenging.
No, for sure. I think like another big thing that I kind of want to add to this is like around the female friendships, and kind of how you mentioned, like, we do have more emotions. I don't think that's necessarily always true. I think it, like, men have emotions similarly to women, and then there's also women who could potentially be emotionless, or just not as, like, a little bit more reserved. But one thing that I think is, like, specifically for me growing up, when we're like in our puberty ages, this is when your hormones, female, male, whatever gender you are, like, your hormones are all over the place. So I would say that like your brain activity and like your normal state is not technically normal, because everything's a little bit up in the air and chaotic, right? So I feel like the friendships that you have at that time, like, can, like, for women specifically, for me, like, I'm just thinking back then we struggled a lot more with drama and like cattiness back then than obviously we would now when we've matured and like grown out of it. But when I was in like school, I always would have like my friend group in school, but then I would always have a friend group outside of school that was a couple years older than me.
Right.
And I always just thought like, oh, I'm just, I like older people, or I'm a little rebellious and reckless, so I like to hang out with the older kids kind of thing. But now, like, as we're having this conversation, I'm looking back on it and I'm like, to be honest, I probably wanted to hang out with older people because, like, the people at that age, at that time, like, I could sense the immaturity levels. I could sense the, like,
you
bitterness.
Didn't connect with them the same way.
Exactly. And yeah, I did feel like a lot of, like, my friendships, like, throughout school were school friendships. Do you know what I mean? It was harder to stay friends outside of school than it was like when you're just like, oh, well, we're in the same classes, so that's kind of why we're friends, kind of thing. But yeah, for me growing up, I always had another friend group that was like outside of all my school friends. And yeah, I feel like that was just the perfect representation of like, and to be honest, that group always had guys in it as well. Like, it was, there was probably 1 or 2 other girls, but there was probably like 5 or 6 guys in that group.
Laid back.
Yeah, so kind of
mature, like you were saying.
Exactly. And how you touched on the notion earlier of like, oh, that girl's kind of like she's a guy's girl or whatever. I used to get that type. Like, I was very much a tomboy growing up.
Yeah. Believe it or not. Yeah.
Look at us now. It's
I really was. And I still am, deep down.
Look at me. I am, like, truly.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time, I used to get that comment from a lot of people. And a lot of people thought it was just because I wanted to hook up with the guys, or because I was a slut, or whatever it is that you wanted to classify me. But again, like, back at that time, it was, I am like the most anti-drama person ever. Like, I do not like confrontation. I don't like when like people are butting heads. I don't like to be involved in that. So I feel like at that time I was trying to avoid, I don't know, like the drama and like the immature friendships that kind of like come up at that time.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm sitting here reflecting on so many things as I'm listening to you. And I wrote this down. I have a little notepad that I have in front of me, actually. I just wrote this down. Who we were then isn't necessarily who we are now. And that reminded me
a huge point.
of when we're younger and we have trauma, but we're not self-aware when we're young. We haven't read the books or listened to the podcasts or studied this,
Your brain hasn't even developed
journals,
yet.
Right, like 25, they say. Yeah. And women mature faster than guys and whatever science says. The point of the matter is, from an emotional perspective, we do things when we're younger because we want to be popular, or we want to be
feel
seen,
loved.
or you know, we want, and so we don't know how to ask for those things from verbal, so we act out, or, you know, we gossip because everyone else is gossiping, so you add to the gossip to feel cool, or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And you might have been super antisocial as a kid and the most outgoing, beautiful, energetic person, vibrant person now. You might have been the most energetic, vibrant, social person then and become a recluse introvert.
Like a 180 personality
right. And
type
like,
thing.
I didn't realize, like, I'm an ambivert. So people who are like an introverted extrovert, like, I get my energy from being around people and connecting with people, but I also get energy from being alone and reclusing and being by myself.
Yep.
And a lot of those anxieties and fears that creeped up when we were little, we don't know how to work through them, so we act out usually.
Yeah.
And I think about, if anyone who knew me when I was really young, they might have had this perspective or judgment
totally.
about me then. And I'm like, I've grown, I've done work, I've
Not
gone
the
to
same
therapy.
person.
I have so much trauma that you don't know about, and I've changed, and I'm a very different person than who I was back then. There's obviously the little Alex inside of me. She's still there. The core of my values, my belief systems, like, all that stays the same.
Yeah.
But I'm a better listener now. I'm more articulate now. I am more calm and patient and less judgmental. Like, there are things that have changed, but then you don't get the opportunity to meet this new version of me because you're holding on to judgments of me. And I'm just speaking in general. This goes for anyone.
Yeah.
Every person that you know. And it just thought of when you were saying when you were younger, it all comes down to like an energy. We can either vibe with a person, you said that person has good vibes, or you don't vibe with a person, and that just does that energy match. And when you find people in your adult life where your vibe or your energy is at the same level and matches, like, hold on to that, because that is really what defines a healthy relationship at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I really like the way that you shared that. I think that was really important information to add to that, and it, like, I'm glad that me talking about that stemmed that thought for you, because now I want to add more to that. Even is like the version that we're showing up as our little Liv or little Alex, like our childhood self going through junior high, high school, all of that. University, like when we're in our immature, like, underdevelopment stages, another thing to be mindful of is, like, I hate to say it, but, like, as a kid, you really can only be, like, what your parents and what your upbringing allows you to be. Like, who Alex is right now and who Liv is right now. We've gone through a ton of different experiences that, like, involved our family life, involved school, involved, like, personal issues, so many other different
your
traumas
teachers,
that, like,
your coaches,
so many other things affect, right? And all of, like, she did basketball, just for example, so, like, her coaches affected her there. I did figure skating, so my coaches affected me there. That literally changes how our brain develops down the road. But, like, one thing that I want to add is, like, these kids that you go to school with, I don't know if anyone else, like, says this, I'm sure they have, but, like, kids are mean. Kids are awful. They are bullies. Why do you think they're so awful? The only thing that they know how to share is, like, what they've... I'm getting goosebumps, and this is almost, like, making me a little sad, because...
I'm sad, too.
Well, cause it's sad to
this
think
is supposed
about.
to be your happy episode.
It
so
is.
funny.
Like, there's some positive
like,
and negatives
God,
to everything.
So
but more so I want to share this so that... Because, like, you were saying that, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, little Liv back then wasn't showing up as, like, how I am now at all.
Because you didn't know who you were. You're not supposed to know who you are.
I was, like, neglected affection, and I, as, like, a little version of myself back then, did not know how to connect with people. And even as a 26, almost 27-year-old woman now, like, I genuinely still struggle to ask people for what I need, or to share with close friends, even Alex, like, to let her know what I need from her, or to be open and honest about that. And a lot of that has to do with, like, your upbringing, what you're introduced to, like, what you're surrounded by. So yeah, I think that's an important note to kind of add to it, because, like, the people that you grow up with, like, they're not always going to be like that. The people you got bullied by, like, in junior high or elementary school or whatever,
usually they're hurting the most.
And you know what, I bet you they're completely different now. I bet you some of them are still bullies, but I bet you a lot of them, like, feel awful about that time in their life. And like, the reality is like, we just go through a bunch of different versions of ourselves.
Yeah, which is similar. You had made a comment right before we started recording today, is like friendships they ebb and flow. It's like we as human beings, our personal lives, our experiences, our feelings, our emotions, they ebb and flow.
Totally.
So your relationships with other people are going to do the same thing. I've looked at people that I thought were going to be, holding my hand on my deathbed, best friends, or people that I
maid
knew.
of honor.
Yeah, I had like 16 bridesmaids. And like now I probably wouldn't even have a wedding.
I was just gonna say I probably wouldn't have a bridal party.
No, like I'm lucky to have 3-4 people in my wedding at this point. So it's really important when you do have those people in your life. Like, I am sure there's lots of listeners out there who can think back, and some of your best memories are going to be with your best friends. You snuck into a movie, or you went shopping and saw this cute guy, like things, or went for a drive and blasted the music and laughed, and like after you leave, you feel your soul and your spirit are so full. You feel like you got just everything off your chest. You had a good time. Like, some of the best times, like Liv and I, one of the first times we met, we went to the beach. Oh my God, this still makes me laugh clearly. And we thought we were going to take a shortcut back to our car.
I just had this. I just shared this with C the other day.
Did you?
Oh my God,
yeah. So we barely knew each other at this point. That's a quick story. And we were like, "Oh, I think you drove. Did you drive or did I drive?"
You drove.
Oh, I drove.
But we both had to be back to the city for
my sister's birthday.
Yeah, it was
and
a
you
literal
had a guest
birthday
coming
party.
over.
Yeah, and I had someone like who was flying in and like showing up to my house. So we're like, we'll hang out at the beach and then we'll get home, but we'll be early and like on time.
Oh my goodness. So we were like, let's take this shortcut. It was like this tiny little path. Literally
through the literal woods. We couldn't see anything.
We ended up like back country hiking.
I think we did a loop around the beach and came out on the other end.
We literally went back. It was like 45 minutes.
We literally walked for 45 minutes, and guys, I'm telling you, when we came out to the clearing to like look and be like, I remember telling you, I'm like, oh, your car's right up there, your car's right there. We come out to the clearing and we like look, and then we turn to our left, like an almost full 180, and then we look way down yonder. To the left is her car. Like
another 20-minute walk.
Way out left field.
We literally could have gone back in 5 minutes, and it took us an hour to get back up the car. Because we got lost.
And we were so confident in the fact that we were going the right way. And for 45 minutes, we walked the wrong way.
Yeah, and we're in this like this marsh, this crazy like really wooded area, and we're wearing flip-flops. I had blisters. My feet were bleeding.
We had bags of all of our beach stuff.
We were carrying all our beach stuff. And
we swapped shoes by the end of it because her blisters were so bad.
I still have a scar.
I think I got blisters from the short period of like wearing your shoes.
I know. And the funny thing is we were both on our best behavior because we didn't know each other that well, so we didn't want to complain too much.
We weren't like cursing.
We weren't telling each other how we really feel. We were like laughing about it because in hindsight it's quite funny how the stupidity of it. But at the end of the day, like that moment, that 45 minutes of us walking together, like suffering together, made me at least feel, I'll speak for you, like I felt so much closer to you because we could laugh at that moment and tell our mutual friends about that moment and think how silly it was to this day.
No, totally.
Almost a year later.
Also, girl, I don't even, like how you just said we weren't sharing our honest, I don't know if I shared this with you, but I am like terrified, like mortified of snakes, or even
really, I didn't know this.
So little creatures in grass. I don't know if it is snakes because I scream when I see them, but it's specifically long grass. If I'm walking in long grass and I either can't see my feet or I'm walking in a path and there's long grass on either side of me, which is like we did that for 45 minutes out one direction and then 45 minutes back the one direction. I remember you picked up your phone because you were like talking to your sister for her birthday, letting her know we're going to be late. Yeah. And that was the first time that I had to like, I had to like do deep breaths because I was
in front of me too.
And I was in full panic mode that whole time. And you stopped talking to me to answer the phone, which was like the only time that I was actually able to process like what was potentially happening. Funny
because I would pick those snakes up and no problem.
Launch them. Me, I would have screamed and probably
ran.
Did
you just say launch them?
Yeah.
No, I would pick them up to calmly put them to safety.
In my head, I'm like launch them. I'm literally thinking you're grabbing the snake that's like coming.
Snakes.
No, grab it by the tail and like launch it into the grass.
Did I never tell you? I have snakes around my place, and I've picked them up regularly because I thought people were going to step on them. I used
Alex,
to own 11-pound
I
snake.
will tell you right now
Oh
that
my
if you
God,
pick
good
up a
to
snake
know.
in front of me,
I
I
would,
will
yeah.
A, scream, and potentially B, hit you with said
That's so funny.
snake.
My sister's really similar. We went for a hike once, and there a snake was in front of us. I didn't tell her because I knew she knew. If she listens to this, she's gonna laugh because we were also chased by a pheasant for like 20
Oh
minutes. It was
my
such a fun
fucking,
trip.
that
She's gonna hate
sounds
me. But
insane.
anyway, let's get back to the
Little story
episode.
time there for you.
I'm gonna say a statistic here, and let's move on to the next section, which is according to Statistics Canada in 2018, 27% of Canadian adults reported feeling lonely sometimes or often. And I can definitely tell you I'm a part of that statistic.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know. I think I took the census in 2018, but
She is literally a part of that.
literally part of that statistic. But I was saying to Liv when we were looking at our statistics we wanted to share that this was in 2018. So the census, and again, I might be wrong. It's like every 4 years or 6 years or something. Like
I'm not sure.
It's a chunk of time in between, and I
This
can
is
tell
pre-COVID,
this is
though.
pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So I can tell you right now,
This is doubled.
losing friendships or lacking connection during COVID, more people reported being suicidal, depressed, lonely. There's like languish and forlorn. Like those are those feelings of like definite like
just like deep despair.
Deep despair, exactly, like hopelessness.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now that if we were to look back at the stat, now that probably would not be 27%. We'd see a little bit more. So this just goes to show like why friendships, nurturing friendships, maintaining friendships,
and just having
are so
human
beneficial.
connection.
Yeah, exactly.
It really like it plays such a heavy role on like how you're able to show up in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you a question now.
Hit me with
back
it.
and forth. And this kind of goes in. We were just laughing 2 seconds ago about a story about why we became friends. So this is kind of a perfect setup onto our next segment here. How can we effectively resolve conflict in our friendship?
Yeah.
So I know that this is something you and I have talked about from day one. And let's just look before you answer is like, let's look at the theme of like setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Because I think that plays a big role in conflict in friendships and relationships.
Totally. Yeah. And even just to like bring back that part that I kind of mentioned earlier, like Liv now is not little Liv, but also like who I am right now is also still under development. Like I'm not my best self. It's impossible to think that I would be at the age of 26. I have so much life left to experience, and there's a lot of experiences that are going to shape the way that I will future show up in relationships, friendships, partnerships, all of it. But yeah, specifically touching on the notion of like conflicts with friendships, because obviously like we're sitting here telling, and like a lot of people could take this information and be like, okay, well, John, you're off the list where you're gonna get cut because blah 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 blah, and Joe over here, you're off the list as well. But like you can't just go and cut ties with all of your friends. That's definitely not what we're trying to say. We're actually trying to say the opposite of like work on the friendships that can be worked on kind of thing. Cut off the ones that are no longer like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Benefiting you,
yeah,
like mutual
like filling you up kind
yeah.
of thing, yeah, or like helping you in life, holding you back, I guess, and yeah, like introducing yourself to new people, opening up space in your life for like new people down the road. But yeah, specifically touching on conflicts, like it's inevitable. You're gonna run into conflicts with every friendship, with every person.
It's healthy.
Like, it is healthy.
Yeah,
and I think the biggest thing to work on here is like making sure that the way that you go about said conflicts is in the healthiest manner.
Yeah, mature. Definitely.
Yeah, and that both of you are trying to come to like an end goal of resolving it so that both partners in said conflict like feel the best afterwards kind of thing, and feel like they've been heard and like everything has been helping them. So yeah, just for me personally, and like touching on the boundaries portion, I definitely in past relationships I struggled to speak up, and because of that I don't want to say I was the kind of friend that would like ghost people, but like just for example, like when I left PEI, I have a couple friends that I used to have like friends there who I am still friends with now, but there's a lot of people from PEI that I just wouldn't talk to anymore, wouldn't even let them know that I'm coming to visit the island and whatnot.
Right.
And a lot of those friendships ended because I wouldn't be clear on whether it was like a specific conflict or maybe it was something that like they believe in this, but I believe differently or something like that. Like if we just didn't have the same views or didn't line up anymore, I would just kind of cut the person off and go on with my life kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now at 26, I'm kind of reevaluating things, and as I'm developing new friendships, and it was a personal note whenever we became friends, because I would say...
Like you and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say you would be probably my newest closest friend.
Right.
I've made literally over the past year, just for example, I've made like a handful of closer friends, but you would be like one of the best friends that we're actually developing. Like we're obviously run a podcast together. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not just going to classify her as like an acquaintance kind of thing.
No. You can say I'm one of your best friends. Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, give me that title, please. Yeah,
better.
No, but just kidding. You already know.
Yeah.
But it was something that, for me personally, I was adamant on doing things differently in this friendship. Because even just, for example, when I moved to PEI, Halifax from PEI, which was only like 3 years ago and some... Like, even the friendships I first made when I moved here, I wouldn't say that I started those off on the best foot either. Like, I was more so just like, I don't have any friends in Halifax. Anyone who I kind of meet, anyone who wants to take me under their wing, like, please be my friend kind of thing.
You weren't as picky as maybe you could have been.
Yeah. Less so, like, pickiness, but more so, like, I wasn't clear on what I needed in the friendship.
Was it because you weren't sure about what you wanted?
Yeah, but also, like, 3 years ago, Liv, I was just... You know
You'll take anybody.
My awareness was not the same as, like, I viewed my friendship to this depth.
Right.
And even then...
Well, yeah, by pickiness, I meant, like, actually cultivating and developing relationships that you thought were going to be more meaningful and long-lasting.
And that are going to stand.
Versus, like, people that are just like, oh, let's go drinking, or, like, kind of surface-level friends. Like, when we're young, we'll take everybody. Everyone's our friend.
Yeah.
Versus when we're older, we're a little bit more pickier because... Yeah. Showing your heart or being more vulnerable at an older age is a little bit scarier for us.
Also, like, you as an older version of yourself know what works more for you and what doesn't. Like,
you're more self-aware.
Exactly.
So you're going to put a boundary, put up with less stuff that's not aligned with your self-awareness and your values and your core beliefs.
Exactly. So whenever I moved from PE, I feel like a lot of the friends that I was cutting off and a lot of those relationships, I felt like I was cutting off at that time because they didn't have the same interests as me. They didn't have the same drive as me. They were fully content with, like, staying on PEI, living out their lives there, and they didn't really see much more for themselves. Whereas for me, I was like, I can't relate to any of this. Get me off this island. Whenever I moved here, I was like, oh my God, Halifax. Like, people actually want more than this. And I don't know, fast forward a little bit, I realized Halifax is just a tiny bit of a bigger version of PEI.
It's like the big sister of PEI.
It really is. Like, in the small town places like this, like, everyone knows everyone, and people can kind of get stuck in, like, the mindset of, like, staying here forever.
That hit me when I left and went to one of the largest cities in Canada, and then, like, booming cities of young people. And then came back, and I was like, whoa, everything's kind of the same.
Also, like, Alberta is West Coast. We're East Coast. Yeah. Like, that's a very different
culture of people. And it was, you know, obviously I came home under circumstances that we've kind of covered a little bit, but it was a slap in the face to be like, whoa, like, I left, I changed, I grew, but when I come back to where I was born and raised, like, it kind of all stayed really relatively similar.
Whereas you're a different version of yourself now.
Yeah. I knew that, like, I have a childhood friend who's, like, a sister. I've known her since we were 3 and 2. Our parents are best friends, and I remember, like, when I went for dinner, that was one of the first things she said. She's like, I just feel like I'm with a completely different person, and you've grown up so much, and I've seen you change so much.
Oh yeah.
And it's a little bit more easy to see that when you've gone away for 5 years, like half of a decade, and come back versus being completely with that person for the last 5 years. You don't notice those
You won't
changes.
notice those little changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you're growing together and, like, what?
Doing the same thing together, having kind of that same trajectory and path and position in life. So yeah, sorry for interrupting. Continue your story.
No, not at all. I don't think that was an interruption. It was just more information to add to it. I feel like kind of like let's pull back to specifically like conquering the conflict aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I think like you brought up the boundaries thing, which I think is really good. That's like probably one of my number one things that I would say is to like cultivate a good relationship, but also to keep it long standing. You need to be clear on what your boundaries are. If you're like, just for example, Alex is, would you say ambivert?
Yeah.
Is it ambivert?
Yeah, ambivert.
Okay, just trying to make sure I say the words
like
right
amber,
Ambivert.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if I must have heard that one. I am an introvert.
Yeah.
I am an extroverted introvert. I can go in
So
social...
you're an ambivert then? Because you're both.
Nope.
You're an extroverted introvert?
Okay, so I'm just an introvert then.
Okay.
Let me explain,
Okay.
and then you can say what you think it is. I solely am, like, fueled by solo time. When I hang out with people, I can, more so what I was trying to say is I can be extroverted in the sense that I would say I'm
You're
a social
forced to
introvert.
be more extrovert when you're around people.
Yeah, like I can carry the conversation. I'm good under pressure, and yeah, like I have a lot of social anxiety, but if there was no one else there with me and I had to like show up for a social thing, I can do that no problem and carry the conversation.
But you're exhausted at the end of it.
Even hanging out with my friends, and God love you to death. God love you, Alex, but I'm gonna go home and be exhausted after that. Like, it's just how I am. I do so much better with like the alone time kind of thing. But that is a boundary for myself that like even for the longest time I didn't really know I had to set kind of thing. So I was like, oh, we're going to a social thing. I'm just gonna go until everyone goes home and then I go home. Whereas for me now, to set a boundary like specifically in that area would be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna come, but I'm only gonna stay out till 9 because I know that I need to go home and have an hour of downtime to like recharge myself from the day before I can even get ready for bed and then end my night kind of thing.
Yeah, like you know yourself better and what's going to make you feel good. And when you're older, you have an easier time kind of stating that. And then the funny thing is other people are like, oh my God, I'm glad you said that because I want to
go home too
at 9. Like, oh my God. And like, yeah, my friend and I were out for Kevin Hart and we both laughed at the fact that we were going to get home at like 11 and that's like a quote unquote school night, even though it's like a work night. But like, where it's like, oh my God, like we're not going to be asleep till 1. This is crazy. Like, this is way too early. And then we woke up and she texted me and she's like, do you feel hungover? I feel hungover. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely a good thing to have those boundaries and to be able to set them. And you know what? Then the next time you go and hang out with those friends, you're not going to feel like resentful or frustrated with these people because you set your boundary, you followed through with it, and they were respectful of your boundary. Absolutely. And you know, that avoids so many conflicts. Both parties are kind of going to enjoy their time together more. But yeah, I think that's just like a little notion on boundaries specifically.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think that like it's like any relationship for you guys to have really good relationships. You have to be willing to be vulnerable so people can feel connected to you. It's like when we were little, we connected over things like Polly Pockets and hair barrettes, very surface level young things. But when you're older, you're connecting over like trauma or experiences or feelings or work or whatever that's a little bit more heavier.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it comes down to like I said, being vulnerable and be willing to communicate well. And you know, Liv and I have had a really interesting relationship being that we're adults now and we're new friends and we're starting
the relationship now,
right? And we're starting a business, a hobby, whatever you want to call it together,
like right off the get-go.
So we're learning a lot from the friendship side of things, and being that we are very different, but we're also learning how we show up in our work life. And it definitely sometimes differs. Our core beliefs, our values, what makes us tick, our past experiences are always going to dictate how we communicate to one another. So just being open and honest and asking the questions and being good active listeners will help you navigate those things. Like if I'm doing something that she doesn't like, or if she's doing something that I don't like, having that open dialogue and saying, listen, this makes me feel this way, or I say like, how can I change XYZ to make you feel more comfortable, and just being curious, asking questions, and like valuing and respecting the other person's position and point of view and their life experience, and understand that like we are projections of our emotions and feelings. Like I'm going to perceive my own reality, which is going to be very different than your perception of that. And so if you take a step back and remind yourself that you're not going to see or feel or believe the same things as that other person, is just being curious and trying to understand their point of view. And we don't always agree.
No.
We don't always have to end the conflict in an agreement. We can sometimes end it by saying, listen, like we both gave our sides, we said our piece, we're going to come to a version of a compromise, and we just move forward and know that maybe that's a boundary we don't cross in the future, or maybe we've made an effort to change that in the future so that that doesn't show up for either one of us in the future again.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really, really good point to share. Also, just kind of how I mentioned earlier, like, we are still under development. I'm 26, turning 27. Alex is 34. We have had very different life experiences. Our perspectives of a similar statement or a similar conflict between the two of us is going to look very, very different from our age perspectives, from our life experiences, and also just plain and simple the fact that neither of us are our best selves yet. Do you know what I mean? So kind of how you said, like, the projection thing as well. Another thing I kind of just want to like add to that is people come into your life for a lesson. What is it? A reason?
Season,
or a lesson. I butcher it every time I say it, which
is
why I just let you do it. But like, for example, like, people, friends or partners even can come into your life specifically to show you something that might not be working for you.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, or like a conflict that you might be feeling with like a friend or something. You could be like, oh, that friend is so this. I'm so annoyed when they do this, or it really triggers me when they do that. Well, take a second, pause everything, stop looking at this from your initial perspective, and now look at it, like, look at yourself, turn the mirror on yourself. Sure, what, you know what I'm saying. What's the little thingy?
Oh,
magnifying glass. There we go.
Monocle.
Yeah. I'm butchering all the words.
No,
anyway,
no,
take the
funny.
magnifying glass to yourself and try and figure out what these things are actually triggering you. What could you potentially need to work on in this area that's actually not lining up with the things that are upsetting you about this person? I think it's just a really good time to do some inner growth, and everything that comes up, like, in these interactions in the world, whether it's a stranger on the street, whether it's your 10-year husband relationship, whether it's your kids, your best friends, or whatever, like, everything that they're saying to you, every interaction you have is teaching you something, or it's opening up a different view of something, or it's challenging you to grow to a newer perspective, a newer, higher, more elevated, aware version of yourself. Like, that's really...
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to practice the thing that you need to work on.
Yeah.
And if we look at like the idea of introspection, which is basically what you're saying, is to look inside yourself. We don't use the term introspection often, but what we do use instead is reflecting. Yeah. I'm going to reflect on myself. I'm going to reflect on that situation or scenario. When you think of reflection, what do we think about? A mirror. And when I had said mirror, when you were saying magnifying glasses, because at the end of the day, we are all walking around mirrors of the other person.
Yep.
But
it's a mirror of yourself. Everything that you're seeing in other people, you wouldn't see these things in people if you didn't have a previous experience that like shapes the way that you view things. So we're reflecting
back those experiences, either similar or very different experiences. And I like when you use the word like that person to trigger me. It's like, okay, they might have a personality behavior trait or something that you don't align with. Can you love them unconditionally? Mm-hmm. Can you accept them and their flaws?
Yeah.
Can you agree that their energy won't penetrate the boundary that you've set?
Yeah.
Can we be detached from expectations? And I think that all of those things really play a role, because if you can't say yes to those things, then maybe that energy just isn't meant for you.
Yeah.
But if you can take that, you triggered me because of XYZ, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, like, I realize that I get triggered in that situation a lot. Mm-hmm. You've mentioned your road rage in the past. I'm very impatient sometimes and judgmental of certain things. So, like, is it that person, or is it actually a reflection of a behavior trait that you don't like in yourself, that you want to work on, but you are not willing to take the responsibility, and then you observe it? Yeah. When you observe that emotion and intellectualize where that's coming from, you have a better opportunity to change it, and then you find that unconditional love for the other people that maybe you didn't have before.
Totally. And just like to add to the road rage thing specifically, I wouldn't be at this place where I'm saying that like I don't have the same road rage that I used to have anymore. It's actually something that I actively work on. And now when I'm in the car and like I start to either verbalize like this person is irritating me or like why are you doing that, and I catch myself doing those things, immediately I know it's a reflection of myself. I'm running late. I'm impatient. I didn't have time that morning to, I don't know, do whatever I needed to do, and now I just feel antsy in the car while I'm like rushing or whatever it is. Like the only way that I was able to come to terms with like working on my road rage and like changing that was literally how I said I've been in the car with previous partners who would just be like outrageously angry at someone who was quite literally not in the wrong in the road, and that was the perfect scenario for me to be like, I've been this partner that is irritating me and is making me feel uncomfortable for their outrageous road rage. I've been that person. So what I'm viewing right now and feeling uncomfortable about with this person is how people feel with me when I'm going through one of these similar road rage tantrums or whatever. So that really just put a lot in perspective, and I realized I don't want to be the kind of person who's flipping people off on the street or in the car or making people in the driver or passenger seat with me feel uncomfortable. So
it's the characteristic traits of people that if you don't want to be around it, if it's a negative behavior, it's like, why do you want to act that way and expect other people to be wanting to be around you?
Yeah, but I think it's a great place to look at these things that irritate you about humanity and look at these things that irritate you about strangers on the street or your friends or your family members, and just like Alex said, turn the mirror on yourself for a second and be like, okay, so what do I do in that scenario? How do I behave or react? Am I reactive or am I responsive? Like, yeah, just it's a good time. Like, we're talking about obviously friendships here, but there's two people in every friendship. There's two people in every relationship, and one of those people is you.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If your friendships maybe aren't the best, or you've had a history of a lot of fallouts or a lot of drama in your friendships,
or friends
like
are ghosting you,
yeah, just it might not be a bad idea to just do a little reflective period with yourself and kind of see how that could be playing a role in your life as well. But to wrap up today's episode, guys, we shared a lot of information with you. We've been talking away, shared a little bit of our experiences and just a little bit of insight into, obviously, this is just our perspective. This is our opinions. This is our advice. Hello, Nora. I don't know if you guys heard her.
Too.
Last little input. But yeah, we really just want to encourage you guys to reflect on your current relationships, reflect on how you show up as a friend in those relationships, and maybe reach out to someone that you haven't talked to in a while. Like, just check on that friend that maybe lives abroad or moved away from home, or that friend that you wish you kind of kept up with and haven't chatted with in a little bit. Like, shoot them a message.
Absolutely.
Like, literally pop in and say hello. I know, like, I'm about to go to PEI, my hometown, for a little bit, and I'm literally thinking, like, there's an old friend who I have not seen in a few years who I'm probably going to reach out to after this conversation. So,
that's great.
Yeah, I think it will be probably needed. Right now, more than anything, we all just need connection and, yeah, just more like love and everything.
Yeah, that's
But yeah,
great.
this pretty much wraps up today's episode. We are going to share with you guys that moving forward, we are going to be doing bi-weekly episodes instead of the weekly episodes. No real huge reason to why or anything. Just, summer's coming. We have 9 episodes out already that you guys can kind of go and like catch up on.
I know a lot of people are busier during the summer months.
Yep.
Kids are off school and people are, just wanting to go to the beach and be outside and do lots of things. So
yeah, totally. And honestly, we've had like most of our episodes, I would say, are probably longer. We've had a pretty good balance of the shorter ones as well. But yeah, I think with doing the bi-weekly, like we'll be more comfortable sharing like these longer episodes with you guys. It's just like a nice sit down and chat. And yeah, don't get us wrong. Like every now and then we'll have some nice short ones. We'll play the field a lot. We have lots of things that we want to share with you guys.
And that's not meaning it's a forever thing. We might go back to weekly. We might, who knows what the season will bring.
Yeah.
But yeah, so far we really appreciate everyone who has listened to all the episodes.
Yeah, go catch up on the previous ones if you haven't.
Yeah, give you a chance to do that.
Yeah.
And then as always, let us know what you want to hear. Let us know what kind of topics and themes you want us to cover, and we'd be happy to add that to the list.
Yeah, for sure. We got lots of ideas, but we are always welcome to hear what you guys want to hear more from us. But yeah, thanks again for being here today. Happy Thursday, or whatever day it is that you're listening to this. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Cats, Chats, and Coffee, and also just yeah, keep up with our episodes.
And make sure you turn on your notifications on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and anywhere else that you listen so you don't miss an episode when they do come out.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, guys. Bye now.
See you later. Okay. I was like,
I'm like sitting there, I'm like, I can wait.
oh my god.
And then I'm like, no, I cannot.
That's funny.